over what the DTCC is supposed to be doing, keeping track of all these transactions that fire off in a millisecond. But that's kind of what her focus would be. I always thought her, getting into that field was more to cover the crimes of the derivatives that are still out there on the books, and to figure out a way to hide everything. But I don't know what she's doing with the digital asset holdings. But it would be, if there's anything that's going to be, we want to take over the world, it would be that, because it's working with the DTCC and the whole seed and company ownership issue. So, I don't know if it'll work, but I just say, if we're going to keep an eye on anything, let's keep an eye on that.
Keep on that one, yeah.
Yeah, not those poor Chinese fellows.
Yeah, those guys are probably getting flooded with emails like, "Oh my God, what did we do? Don't answer. Just don't answer." It's like when they knock on your door, just don't answer. Pretend like we're not here.
Or they say, "Oh my God, they're on to us. They're on to us. Run!"
Yeah. Godzilla.
Chinese companies and stuff, though, they don't have the same sense of symbology we do. So, they try for a particular look, and you see that they've got, swastikas, and they like that hard-edged part of the, what was it called? The Art Deco movement of the 20s and the 30s. And so it looks really fascist. And that's the big wave in terms of Chinese advertising. So I can't wait to see them try that over here. It's just not going to fly too well.
Yeah.
But these guys, those poor fellows, they were just trying to puff themselves up, basically, and say that their coin was backed by something. And, the guy from Intel showing that code, first off, okay, you can believe someone would be really, really, really lame, but the SDR and the IMF, would they write their code in JavaScript? I don't think so. And then also, the only time he had anything in there about the SDR was simply to show what the basket of currencies is based on.
Yeah.
Just a goofy, it's really weird. The FUD, though, it goes to that unknown energies from space, and how people are reacting to it. Some people I see, I did not expect it to react this way, but almost everybody I'm running into, at least online, that has a consistent presence over time, I'm able to monitor their language and see it shift with this, myself included, with these damn energies coming on in and making us all raspy bastards or whatever. And you see people fighting and all of this, but you also see the other side of it, all the people getting really whipped up about the creativity possibility now that they're set free with cryptos, right? Now that they don't have to worry about funding and all of that weird stuff. But that's what's created created the situation where we've got all these companies and people are instantly bitching at them. Well, why didn't my coin go up? And it's like, well, wait a second. We've only been open 2 days.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the Pillar coin. I haven't looked at it today, but I think Friday maybe, even Pillar, which was the one that was kind of getting dogged, jumped up 62% out of nowhere. And I'm like, where's the news or anything related? Did they just come out with their wallet or something that fast? No, there's no. It's just maybe people, hey, that sounds good. Let's get into it. It's hard to figure out why some of these things go up, but generally speaking, like your WebBot reports had said, the crypto ones anyways, all, rising tides, you said it a bunch of times, rising tides raise all ships, including all these tokens and whatnot. So generally they're just going up. And that's kind of what we saw. We saw the 10x pay token. Curious, Salt's not quite available yet, but I was, was kind of hoping it would have been, and I would like to see what it would have done here recently, because I think it would have been probably one to watch.
Salt's actually advertising on YouTube. I've seen a couple of ads for Salt lending, and the ads are very slick, and the linguistics are really nice. I thought, they did a good job.
Hey, Clif, can you give us because I know you didn't address Salt in any of your reports, and I've been, a big proponent of Salt ever since I heard you talk about it, but you didn't really address it in your written reports. Was there something in the language with the name Salt that...
Yeah, exactly. You've got to bear in mind that I used to do 100 million, but now it's on the order of maybe 2 or 3 billion reads. And most of the work is throwing out stuff. And so all of the common language, Salt included, all of those sets. It really screws it. I mean, it skews the data to the point that interpretation becomes really dodgy, right? And so that I might be able to get an interpretation out of there, but the concept, the linguistics around the concept of the lending with cryptos as collateral and using it as a vehicle for fiat has huge legs during this period of time that we're seeing the fiat die. But I can't attribute that to any any company because salt is so damn common. If I did it, it would end up with, pegged all the way across on all of the metrics. So it's like, kind of screwed there. But the space is phenomenally well represented in the data, has long legs to about maybe 2024. And so that might even be about the death of real effective governmental issue fiat.
I've been doing, out of all the cryptos I've looked at, Salt is probably the one that I put the most energy and effort into studying it, analyzing it, talking to them, talking about how they're slowly unraveling this ICO. They've pretty much now figured out, well, we got to just go with let everything out of the bag. And on Tuesday, they have their official ICO. But I think it'll sell out quickly. And then, just the concept of it, that you can monetize your cryptos without selling them. Yeah. Everybody in the space is thinking, God, finally, I don't have to sell my Bitcoin just to pay rent. At a low point in the market, I can hang on to it. I think there's a
side benefit to that too. Of course, if you've got the holding and you're going to do that, the tax benefit, you're not taxed on a debt.
Yep, and it's the more I look at this, they're going to offer, at least in the prospectus they just sent out, they're going to have a debit card with it as well. So,
cool.
These guys have gone through all the regulators. They've done everything right. Eric Voorhees is the guy, kind of the head guy there, and he's Shapeshift, and he's got a huge history in the space. So I'm really excited about that one going, at least very strong. And then it gets to what exchange does it get traded on? Because we know some of these little guys that get traded on just EtherDelta, like Veritasium, PPT, and Pillar, they're only traded on EtherDelta. And EtherDelta those are actually transactions that are on the Ethereum blockchain, as opposed to the things that, Poloniex and the big exchanges, which are all in the pool, probably more manipulated to some point, but there's just so much volume there. And I could just imagine one of these small guys like Veritasium getting on one of the big exchanges. The exchanges will probably be scared to death that people will just, trade a little bit and then pull their Veritasium out, and then all of a sudden they're trading Veritasium with no Veritasium in the pool.
There's other issues with Veritasium, though, for them from an API viewpoint. It's a complex ERC20, and then there's also the sheer size of the market for it. The fact that it's a limited quantity already, and most of them are locked up by Reggie in the contracts, in the escrow contracts. So it's a very small pool of liquidity, and you know what that does to an exchange when they're trying to actually form a pool. The only way they could do it would be to basically be bidding the price up against their own new customers.
There's only 2 million tokens, Veritasium tokens, actually out there right now, and Reggie's got the rest locked up.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so I can see that he's actually in an economic bind more than they are in a technical bind insofar as putting them on to an exchange. Because EtherDelta is different, of course, because of the peer-to-peer component of it. And settling across the Ethereum network, it's not an issue, absent lag time. But of course, the huge vulnerability in it is massive manipulation. Right?
True. We saw that
I've got
recently.
no Ether. Let me see if I had. Okay, so I've got 4 Veritasium, and I want to have 40 of them. Well, I can't afford them at whatever today's price is. I don't have a clue in US dollars. But all I'd have to do is to take a little tiny bit of my Veritasium within a little algorithm and sell off, consistently lowering the price until I decided, okay, and then I see the big guy start to get panicked and then swoop in at the appropriate point and pick up what I want.
And that's exactly
if they follow the psychology.
Yeah, and if you look at the price movements of Veritasium, and it goes up like a rocket and falls like a rocket, and it's really interesting to see that. And the more news, and Reggie's going to come out with the Jamaican Stock Exchange announcement at some point in August or September, whether or not it's up and running or working, and that should be a huge basically announcement to the crypto world that, hey, this blockchain stuff can really be injected into criminal systems and make them more sane, more reliable, more verifiable.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. I think Reggie's going to bring in some very nice stuff with the exchange, and we don't have to worry about the other part of it. Coinbase, Poloniex, or any of these other guys, because if you look at it, all Reggie has to do is to step his way into a large enough fiat to software representation of a stock exchange, and then he's got the base platform, and then he can just fold right in there Veritasium along with all the other offerings.
Yeah, right? That would be essentially the first crypto traded as a stock on an exchange. Holy moly!
Hey, and let's Cliff, you mentioned the keto thing on your website, remember?
Yeah.
This thing for like new ICOs that may not do well, whatever, would kind of be good. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I meant to actually talk about it the other day when I was I think talking with Sean and whatnot, and we just got to keep going on other stuff. I was like, I guess I'll have time to mention it. But it was such a kind of a brilliant idea. I feel you should give it some airtime right now, unless you need a second to pull up your website and read it word for word.
No, that's fine. It probably is patentable. It saves ICOs the issues of non-performance. It's kind of like a non-performance bond, if you will. And you set up two contracts. As the people at CentraCard did, they set up one contract. Everybody put their ether into that one contract, and were fed the programs here, their tokens. And in my case, what I would do is I'd set up another contract that would use a buyback, and that's all it would do. And it would know, because of the date of issuance of your token when you sold it, how much ether you paid to get that particular token. And it would basically guarantee you that amount back within a period of time should you decide you want out. Now, in many states, like our state right here, we have this 3-day thing. If you go to buy a car and you get weirded out because you were sold a car you didn't want, you have 3 days to cancel the contract, no harm, no foul. And it even extends into land purchases and houses to a certain extent. And so this would cover you in this world of crypto on both ends. And it would be a real good safety valve for the companies, because it would calm investors down. They couldn't lose, so to speak, because as the buy bot was filling with ETH, it could also automatically fund the buyback bot. And then as the idea is that you would only get the amount you put in, you couldn't gain. So if Ether goes up in the meantime, in terms of its nominal or relative value, then the company would gain that delta. So a company could theoretically do this and then use it as a loan to do an initial funding and make the their entire funding allocation off of the delta between the initial buy-in in ETH and the token releasing in ETH in the contract. So you'd have your contract sent for, say, October 5th, and if there's a rise in the ETH value between now and then, you paid one ETH to get 4,000 tokens. Well, you want to sell your tokens back. You sell back the 4,000 tokens, and you get the fiat value of the ETH back, not that one ETH. And so it works out that the company would gain nominally. However, the real idea is to say, give us time. You're not going to lose anything. We're going to open up this contract. We're going to fund our company. You can sell back to us the coins we gave to you. It's a no harm, no foul, and everybody can part happily if you regret your decision. And in the meantime, the company still has that level of stability because of the funding, and it provides sort of a backstop. And it also eliminates the need. It's an insurance policy in a form that investors would like. Especially the problem is with the ICOs at the moment is that they've got this inverse bell curve going, okay? And the three of us we're in the middle of that bell curve, and we're down here. And we mostly don't hassle the companies. We know they're going to take time. The people that are on the case of the companies are the huge amount of new investors that have a little tiny bit of a fractional investment because of the way ICOs work. And these guys never, ever, ever would have participated in IPO offerings because of the way that those things work. And then the other people hassling them are these guys over here that are big whales in terms of the investment. And again, these guys are likely not to have ever participated in IPOs. So they've got this inverse bell curve of their investor group, with the majority of them not giving them any grief, but vocal minorities on each end. And I bet you that everybody's screaming at the same rate. And this approach of putting up, in essence, a performance bond in the form of a buyback bot at the same time you put out your ICO eliminates that hassle. Set a date on it as to when the buyback bot, can't do any more business, and set it up so it can't be gamed, so your system can't be gamed. And it's a pretty good way of eliminating a lot of the thrashing around. The instructions are on half past human if you read down there far enough.
Yep, just search for a keto. That's how I found it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Took me right to it.
The idea from the company aspect, they gain a lot. They get breathing room, they get stability of financing, they get the impression right off the bat that they're not a scam because they've got a buyback bot that'll lock you in. The minute you buy it, if you think, oh my God, I really screwed up, then you can instantly go and get locked in to get your money back, so to speak, so you're at that same level, at least insofar as fiat is concerned.
Interesting system. I read it and I'm like, this makes sense. This is kind of something that I've never seen before, but like you said, it could create something extremely stable and make people not be so worrisome. Everyone was so scared about Pillar. Oh my God, it's down to 7 cents. Oh my God, it's down to 5 cents. Should I hang on? Just relax. Just hold on, guys. Just wait. And then sure enough, it jumps. It's back to 8 cents. I haven't seen where it is today or yesterday, actually, but it's right back where it kind of started. So it's one of those things. But at least if you had kind of that system in place you're talking about, all you people who got nervous at first, see ya. Get your money back and someone else will scoop it up.
Well, and the way you could do it with the smart contract too is you could lock in instantly, all right? And it wouldn't make any difference. Say you locked in the instant you bought the stuff, you locked in the ability to sell it, or you locked it in some days later. It really wouldn't matter within the description of how I've got these two smart contracts, because the idea is at some point after the smart contract that's got all that everybody bought their tokens from is opened up to fund the company. At that point, the buyback bot would say to you, "Hey, you want to sell me your things? You want to sell me your things for real now? Because I've got Ether to do it." And so at that point, you'd be able to say, "Yeah, I went out of this," or, "Oh, wait a second, they pulled off some stuff here, and it's now worth a lot more than that buyback bot is offering. And so no, I don't want to sell." And so you even the investor would then be able to overcome their FUD, the FUD sickles that are going around,
And like you said, I think the good part is, once it hits a certain point in time, the buyback bot pretty much goes away, and by that time the thing should be stable anyway. Either it's going to be stable by that point or it won't, and if it won't, everyone's going to be selling to the buyback bot.
Correct.
Because it's a dud, it's a turd. Right. The ICO, get me out of here. Or hey, you know what? This thing's moving somewhere. I can see where this is going. Feel pretty comfortable. No buyback bot. No thanks. I'm going to hang on. And okay, tomorrow's your last day. If you change your mind, and then it's over. And of course, if the thing tanks or goes up even more, then it is what it is at that point. But at least you had some time to kind of make that decision, I guess. It's a pretty interesting concept.
And if you look at it, it also helps clean up the thing, right? Say that there actually was an appreciation of the ETH over a couple of months. And so even if it was a situation of where even the company founders originated something that was superseded in 2 months, and they realized, well, we're never going to be able to make it. Whatever our grand design has been done in this other software while we're trying to get our act together, right? And so we know we're always going to be chasing it, so we don't want to do that anymore. Something like that. Some sort of a, because stuff can happen in the software crypto world. And so even then, they could tell everybody, hey, we're going to shut down, sell your stuff off in the buyback bot, and then you sell off, you get your fiat back, and so you've lost a little bit of appreciation in the ether, but then the company that's going out of business may have enough in the remaining delta to pay off the employees and shut down in an orderly fashion and sort of clean up. And that pain is shared by everybody that had bought their original tokens, thinking that they would get a gain out of it. And so it does. It evens it up. It allows things to be cleaned up. It's an insurance policy. It can be implemented extremely cheaply, and can even be planned for failure. A lot of these guys, they don't plan for failure at all. They're just going to go gangbusters and have no clue as to really what they're doing, as many of them are demonstrating to us.
Yep. And you did warn us in advance this summer. There's some winners and there's some losers, some scams, some hacks, you name it. It's coming. Be careful. You absolutely warned everybody.
I got 2 questions for you, Clif. Number one, your lighting got messed up. It looks like you have a little Superman emblem right there.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. It's the wind here. I have to keep the windows open because it's hot, and it blew my stuff out of the my insulation out of the skylight.
Oh, okay.
I can take a minute and put it back if you want.
Great.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, no, you're really dark, but the emblem, it might be the new half-past human emblem I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's like it's hitting the little eagle or whatever that is right perfectly.
Oh, the raven. Okay. Well, hang on.
Raven,
Let me stick the insulation back in, guys. Hang on.
Go ahead. Yeah. In the meantime, I'll talk about some jabroni.
Look at that, baby.
Some jabroni sent me this thing in the mail. May the road you choose be the right road. Bix Weird. I even have a signed box.
I had to put it. I put it in plastic for you because I didn't want the little kids to get their fingers all over it.
Yep. Are you selling these on a site, or is this strictly Road to Ruta like membership things?
This is strictly for members. Yep. Hey, look at that! Clif's got his too. Yeah, it's strictly for members. If you get a membership or renewal, I send you a coin. The coins turned out so cool. I made them like years ago with the Mulligan Mint made them for me, and they went bankrupt in a big implosion. But they did a single strike, and they were trying to go for quantity. I told my guys down at Beck's Engraving, I said, hey, I want the best coin you can possibly make. Double strike them, put the luster on them, put them in the cases and everything. It just turned out awesome. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, nice coin.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if anyone wants one, you got to join.
Yeah, you got to join the private road if you want to get your hands on one. Or get them on eBay, but careful, because I heard somebody just bought one on eBay for like $200. And I'm like, wait a minute, I haven't even sent them out yet. And it was the old coin from the Mulligan Mint, so they didn't get the the numbering on the bottom or the double strike or anything like that.
So, Clif, I've had, and I think even Sean from the SGT report was kind of asking, hey, when you, and I've had a ton of emails, by the way, on this. Hey, if you guys do the Three Amigos thing, when you do that next, could you ask Clif if there's any, number one, is he going to do an Alta report as opposed to the crypto report that he's been doing, or both, like in the coming before the end of the year? If so, how many did you plan? And the other thing was, could we talk about Antarctica if there is anything to talk about? Is there anything new, that kind of stuff?
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff.
He's giddy.
Yeah, I'm doing an Alta report now, and I'm going to bring it out before the end of the month. I'm not really sure when, but I've got sort of a hard deadline because I got to be down signing for the house we're going to rehab on the 28th. So probably going to try and bring it out 26th or 27th if I can. I'm going to do crypto reports, but I gotta try and I must succeed in redoing the lexicon so I don't get this overlay stuff like happened with Centra Tech. Okay, that thing really burned me, and it burned me bad. It actually gave me more damn work because now I've got because I did such a fierce throwdown on poor Sam, and he wasn't expecting it. Now I've got to build him back up, right? Not only for him, but for the investors. So here my karma is now joined to them because I got to be his mentor for who knows how long. But he's getting his act together and things are happening. So, I'm reasonably okay with that. And I am going to do the crypto reports. We have sort of an additional breathing room, if you will, for myself and for us here, because it'll take us 90 days at a bare minimum to get the house rehabbed. It's on the coast. It's been a rental house. There's most of the ocean-facing wall has to be removed and rebuilt, all of that kind of thing. Built in the 1980s, so it needs a serious redo. And then, so during that period of time, I can bring out the crypto reports. But at some point, we have to shut everything down for at least 30 days because I've got two big drive arrays. We're talking something that's quite sizable. It's about 5.5 feet or so high, and holds our bank of our storage arrays. And it's old technology. It's not this the new lightweight stuff, but the shed it's in has been eaten away by carpenter ants. so poor Igor has to have the shed rebuilt. And we've got money for that. There's not an issue or anything, but we've got to get the drives out of there while that happens. And so it'll take us about 30 days. I'm going to see if I can't work out a hot swap situation, but it may be that I'll be moving then and we need to shut down for a while anyway. So a couple of more crypto reports and the Alta report at the end of the month. And Antarctica is just going batshit crazy. just all kinds of real stuff coming out of there, not just the woo-woo capture I'm getting in the data sets. So as an instance, there's the 4 people I know of that are on the internet that are monitoring publicly available planetary monitoring sensors. Okay, so this is like...
What is that?
You can see like Suspicious Observer. He watches the space stuff, right?
Okay.
And some of these people watch SOHO, which is the Solar Observatory Helios.
John, what's his name? He's got his crap focused on satellites and stuff that are like, what the hell is that? Doesn't look like a satellite to me. That guy, John something.
Yeah, and so there's all these people, and they have all these focus that are, and many of them are using publicly available NASA feeds, this kind of thing, right? Or NOAA feeds. There's people that are monitoring the buoys out in the ocean as for temperature and all that information that's coming in. Still the effect of some of the smoke we've got here. It's mostly gone away because we had a little rain. But anyway, though, these individuals, independent of each other, and only because they happen to be watching a wide variety of these publicly available information feeds, are capturing strange energies from Antarctica. Not strange energies from space, but strange energies from Antarctica.
Well, how do you...
Okay.
Are they headed up, or are they headed out, or...
Hey, this is the thing, dude. It's also coincident with the stuff showing up in the data. So I've been writing about this in the data for the last couple of weeks, and hunting these things down on the internet because I assumed it must be occurring. And sure enough, there are people out there finding them. And so some of them are indeed gumming up from the what looks to be the horizon view of Antarctica, and then imagine it shooting a pulsed ray beam kind of a thing out from Antarctica between Patagonia here and New Zealand. And so it should be coming from Palmer Land or Ellsworth Land or Bird Land right in this area here because it passes over them. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so it goes right towards and over all of Polynesia, aiming towards Hawaii. And this is where it leaves our atmosphere, somewhere over Hawaii, because of the angle at which it's being shot and the fact that it's not bending with the curvature of the Earth. But it's pulsating, and so those pulses are being caught by Earth-observing, oceanic observing satellites. And those feeds are being monitored by people that just happen to be recording them. And then they say, what the hell was that?
What was it? Come on. Do you have any idea?
Sure. Yeah, the data suggests that they found a guidance system. That somebody down there found something ancient and turned the on button on.
And it still works.
And it still works. Yeah, that's what the data sets are showing. Now, my problem is those damn blue chicken people have really polluted it, and I've only gotten through about 3,000 or 4,000 words out of what I think might be as much as 16,000 or 17,000. I won't know until I get to the end. I've got to go through and adjust all these values in order to get to a sense of where we were before they started intruding with their stuff. So I can't say for sure if the ancient part of it is there, but for sure we do have an operating technology that no one's talking about that's now leaving visible traces in our oceans, our atmosphere, that are being recorded by our planet-observing satellites in a wide variety of bandwidths, not just infrared, not just ultraviolet, not just visible light, not just radar, et cetera, et cetera. These things are impacting all over. So you remember when they had that Norway spiral thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Obama's whatever the hell was going on there, we can just leave that alone. But that thing was in a visible light spectrum. There was very little impact on any of the feeds that cover the far north for infrared or ultraviolet or cosmic rays or any of this kind of thing. There was some disturbance in some of the very high frequency, what we would think of as microwaves, but very little else other than the visible effect. It was almost like it wasn't really there. These things have virtually, as far as I can tell, have no visible light effect other than slight distortion. because I've seen reports underneath the widening bandwidth of them. So in other words, there's reports that are hitting the maritime circuits around Hawaii when these things are going off, and around South Africa. It's been in a number of places, and there have been a variety of different effects. The one that went into South Africa here appeared to kind of like ground out, also seemed to come from the same area, and was sort of this bloopy little, almost a chemtrail-like effect through the atmosphere. But this was, in a non-visible light energy bandwidth. Now, the one that went up over Hawaii, that was like somebody's giant ray gun cannon, death ray trying to shoot another planet, and it skimmed across the Earth, went out over Hawaii somewhere, which coincidentally, this time of the year, would have, from my perspective, had that thing shooting right through Cassiopeia, where I see all of the activity of all of those secret space bastards zipping around. Okay,
so it was pointed in that direction.
Correct, and it was, by the time it leaves the Earth, it's quite sizable. So you can see that when it's originating in Antarctica, it's relatively small, and it expands out like a cone. And I know it's a cone because there's atmospheric effects that are visible, but there's also oceanic buoys that are responding underneath those atmospheric effects, and only in a very narrow band. So it's a cone of energy that expands out. And by the time it gets to Hawaii, it's quite sizable. So at the time it's at Hawaii, it's at like probably close to 500 miles wide. And that's how wide it is as it leaves the Earth. And
hey,
so,
Clif,
yeah.
could this have anything to do? I haven't been noticing chemtrails hardly at all in the past couple months. I have truthfully not. I used to see them every day, and now I don't see anything. Yeah. Is it related, do you think, or unknown, or
no? It's not. I don't believe it's related, because of something that I'd heard, that I'd been told from some individuals that are in the military, that there were a number of resignations in key spots. All right, and this one guy I know retired recently, like maybe 2 years ago, and was saying, "Oh yeah, so and so resigned." And boy, that's going to leave a big hole. He was paymaster for a bunch of these SAPs, the special access projects. So what I think happened is there's nobody to sign the checks. And so it's a money issue, right? And in the data sets, it actually talks about this kind of thing continuing as we get into the governance problems in September. And so from that point on, I'm not really sure we're going to see a major chemtrail program unless there's actually a public announcement and we raise funds to do it.
Very, very interesting, and I think it's probably a good thing, but nobody knows really what the chemtrails were doing, whether it's good or bad or indifferent.
Well,
there was definitely a reason.
Okay, the reason that was proffered, I believe, from my investigation to the people that were doing it, okay, to the people that had to plan the delivery of the material to the airplanes and all of that, to that cadre, that cohort, they were given a cover story. And the cover story was essentially we must get particulates into the air in order to save the planet. But they were told it wasn't from, SUVs on the ground. It was from solar radiation because of the abrupt changes in the sun. And then they released that information over the course of the last 30 years that we've gone from a yellow sun and we might even head into a blue-white sun. So they've been saying that kind of stuff for a while. And I actually think that to some degree that was occurring. Now, here in the Northwest, we've had the longest stretch ever without rain in the summer. And when the chemtrails stopped, so did our harsh winter conditions, and we jumped into the situation where we're at now. So it's rising up into the 80s here in this loft, and it was 49 degrees last night. And so we're getting huge temperature swings very abruptly. You get out into the sun and you get instantly, within a few minutes, burned. But 30 years ago, that was not the case. It would take, to get the same level of actinic rays, you might have to stay out there an hour and a half or so. And so we're getting bombarded with more energy from the sun itself. And really what it turns out to be actually is that the sun is weakening and the energy is slipping around the sun and is hitting us. And it was just obscured by the fact that the sun had been so robust for so many years, decades, well, hundreds of years, as it went through that particular area that caused it to be yellow. So we can think of it as like the tip on a on a welding torch, and as it goes from metal to metal to metal, it's going to have a different color as it goes along and has to use more and more amperage and that kind of thing, because we live in an electric universe. So that's really, I think, what's going on is they were indeed at some point since 1947 under the impression that they could alter the situation by putting stuff into the air. And recently we saw the University of Washington, and I think it was MIT, but I'm not sure, some East Coast university each come out with conflicting ideas for how to handle this. In the University of Washington, they say, well, let's just take up lots of water and put a lot of water in the air. And that might actually work. But the idea is to back off on all the intense radiation that we're living through. And, it may be our first type 1 activity, species type 1, where we were trying to do a planetary level of alteration. And it may also be that that's the underlying reason for CERN, is that they're going to try and do some kind of manipulation to the sun. I certainly hope not, because I don't think they understand what they're dealing with. I think they still think it's a compressed ball of helium that's in a nuclear fission state, which isn't the case at all.
Yeah, that was my...
I mean, all this stuff is just... I've read so much about it, not about the exact stuff you were saying, but I have read that we're moving into a more dense part of the universe, and the changes in the sun were due to going through more dense material. But it doesn't sound like that exactly from what I would think that would. Well, since you're saying it's not a ball of, it's not a ball of fire. It's something else.
It's ferrite. The sun has been measured. You can look at all the NASA photos. They've actually measured it with all kinds of light-based chromophotography that analyzes what's there. And it's mostly iron. There's huge amounts of gold and copper and silver in it. And I think a small spattering of other metals. And mostly it's cold. But you're correct. It is because of the density of the material that it flares up. And it has very much to do with the fact that the iron, so to speak, is in a ionized gas envelope that then grounds out to the dust or the whatever it is that we're plowing through, the interstellar media that we will never ever see. We'll never ever be able to see it, because by the time it gets to us, it gets all electrified, and we live back in the nice happy vacuum, behind the sun. Mm-hmm. Look what happens to the Voyager satellites that we sent out. They haven't left the solar system. They're still out there at the screechy edge, poking around, saying, "Ow, that hurts. We can't get out of here."
Is that on the side of the coma that we're traveling in?
They're actually behind us now, of course, because they were shot out and their trajectories were such. But yeah, essentially that's on the side as they're trying to escape. They're just shot out on the theory that, oh, well, the area we're in, that's all of space. And it's like, no, dude, we're inside a cell, and you're going to run into those cell walls. And the people have known this for, as part of the Gnostic teachings that go back 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 years. You can see references of this in Sanskrit, of the cell that we live in.
Do you think as we transition out of this government situation, bad guy situation, control over our lives, do you think there's a way we'll get back to teaching people the truth about all this stuff? Or not back to, will we ever get there where people learn the truth about what's going on?
Oh yeah, I think certainly so. And look, I don't know how long it's been in the data, but we're going to come to an economic crisis that's going to be so bad that people in Italy will be rioting. Now, at the time, I thought it was entirely economic, but maybe it'll be they're also being overwhelmed with refugees or migrants or invaders, whatever we're going to call them. But in any event, there will be riots, and the Vatican walls will be breached. And hey, there you go, Bob's your uncle. Let's see what's down there. There might be food down there. Only it turns out to be all this stuff, and as it's coming on out, people are taking photos, and and it starts going viral.
I remember that.
Real stuff, right? But look, this place out in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, right?
Yeah.
Okay, 10, 12,000 years ago, that wasn't created then. That was when they buried it. All right. They analyzed this. You can't take a carbon dating off of stone. You can get other kinds of dating off of stone, gas, and so on. But they didn't do any of that. They did carbon dating on this, and they were carbon dating the bacteria remnants in the dirt around it. So they know when it was covered up. They also know it was deliberately covered up. So they wanted that protected for us, for the people that were capable of digging it out. Unfortunately, we may have dug it out in exactly the same kind of a time period that they wanted to protect it from, a major climatic change and everything. So our timing may be a little wonky, but if you look at those things, each one of those statues is a page of a book. There's actually 4 faces on the statue. I mean, it's a three-dimensional representation. But if you look at it from each profile, there's different things on each profile. And then there's a different view of the head-on, and then if you want to call it that, the back. And all of those form a complete page in what looks to be a description of the people that were down here on this, or the beings that were down here on this planet that created lots of the life, including us humans. And what we're looking at there is representations in a very elegant statuary form of beings that were doing DNA research and creating other beings. And there's even elements of it where they show how they're taking, their own DNA to put into the mix that's here with all of us. I mean, it's really kind of trippy when you look at it, and nobody's talking about the fact that, oh, look, that's one page of a book, and the one sitting right next to it continues that. Here is this being in one of them that is basically saying, my DNA comes out like this. And then in the next, and by the way, my DNA goes back in time that way and goes forward in time this way. And so you go forward, and the next statue over is showing the DNA being used to create a creature that is unlike the parent creature, yet is held that way. And it goes through this 46-page story that comes all the way back to the beginning. I mean, it's just elegantly laid out. And then they covered it up deliberately, delicately, packed it and all of that. They wanted to preserve it, and we have only found a little tiny bit of it. So who knows what was in there? So I think stuff like that's going to come on out. It's going to tell us a lot more that the governments just won't be able to keep to themselves. There's if you really get into the research, this same stuff is replicated by the elites, by these evil blood-sucking fellows, right? And they do the blood-sucking quite deliberately. And it's this effort to maintain their youth. And we now see that there's companies offering to fill you full of teenage blood that they've purified, keep you young, that kind of stuff, right?
I've seen that. I've been reading about that, actually, myself.
That gets back to the Podesta and the Clinton and all the dark things going on there.
Right. I know the underlying science of it and why they do that, what they're after. They don't have a clue, okay? And it relates to the alchemy. And I've done some serious research about that. I know how all of that stuff works there. But going back to their origin, you end up tracing your way back to the king and queen of England, and they do this weird ritual, okay, where the next to be king, they think, goes with the current monarch to this weird rock in Wales, and it's a sacred rock on a sacred spot. And they go through this mumbo-jumbo, and that mumbo-jumbo is basically the current king saying to the other one, hey, guy, here's the real truth of where you come from. And if you ever get into that story of what the current king tells that person, you get this weird view that also kind of validates the whole thing about genetic manipulation, the nummo, and all of this. In fact, it's the king's version of the nummo. And so the nummo story, for those that don't understand it, is that there was Earth. Earth had many creatures on it, but none like exist now. We're talking about all of the dinosaurs and all of the giant snapping turtles in the ocean, all of those kind of things. All of those sorts of critters are the transition of the new beings. All of these new beings, including ourselves, exist because an aquatic race came here that was able to transit through interstellar space. They did it with a liquid copper engine, and they came here and replenished their copper. And while they were here, they had if you will, this was a biological expedition. This aquatic race is female continuously until they need to reproduce. Then they are altering to be male. They fertilize themselves. They have an internal gestation period, and are in many ways like mammals, but are not. And but they have a lot.
Where's this story from? Or what is this from again?
The Nemo story.
Nemo.
Nummo. Okay, that's
Okay.
what they're called in Africa by the Dogon tribe.
Okay.
And it was the religion of the Dogons that maintained all of this knowledge. Now the Dogon people are in Mali now, but they'd originally been on the eastern coast of Africa and had been driven north and to the west by circumstances over centuries. And so all of their knowledge was based when they were in what we would think of as like Kenya, that kind of area, right? Anyway, they know stuff about space that we didn't know until just recently. They could tell you all about the dog star Sirius and the fact that it had these companions and that they were of this size. And sure enough, when we look at it now with our stuff, we find out, look, it's not single star, it's a giant constellation. And look, here's all this stuff that these people could not see with the visible eye ever, ever, ever. You can't even see this stuff with advanced telescopes. You've got to get serious and look for it. And then there was all this other stuff that they knew that only could have been brought here externally, or that they would have been able to gather from some remote past that was a highly advanced civilization. But their theory, their story, their creation story is that humans, and this is replicated up here in the Salish, it's also replicated in the Polynesians, the Melanesians, the Micronesian populations. And the story is that the Nummo came down here, and there was and they took some DNA, and they created the people that would, their idea, the Nummo, I guess, is they cruise around and they find a good water planet. They swim around in it for a while, and then they populate it with stuff, and they go on elsewhere. So they're sort of like, Johnny Appleseed, okay? And so that's their dig. That's what they do. They go and do this stuff. And so they were doing that, and they created these beings that were sort of like us, okay? Sort of like hominids, like humans. And one of them became mentally unbalanced to a great degree. And so the Nummo had already taken off to go to another planet, whether it's their home world or not, who knows. But they'd basically taken off at that stage and left the newly created ones on Earth, one of whom went mentally unbalanced and took one of the Nummo ships and drove it up into the atmosphere, didn't know what they were doing, and crashed on the Earth and polluted the Earth forever, killed it dead because of this liquid copper engine. And so the real Nummo were like horrified because of what had been done, and they now had a karmic debt on our planet. And so the race comes back, long time passes, and the race comes back to try and make reparations. And so they came back and they created all of us. And over here, Raven, in the Salish tradition, Raven was the first creature that they made, and Raven got to walk along with them as they changed everybody else. And so Raven's story is, before, none of us were like that. After Changer came, we are as we are now. And I, Raven, saw it all, except for the before, right? And so it's a really interesting tale to hear it from that side. But anyway, so the Nummo, okay, now, so this is the deal. The one who took off and was insane and came back and crashed and caused all the problems and stuff, that DNA mix was still kept alive on the Nummo ship as it was sailing away, and then it came back, right? And so they brought back that DNA mix. Now, the individual that had gone crazy obliterated, but that DNA it survived. And there's a whole lot of stuff you can read about how it survived, but that DNA that survived, the twin to that is the progenitor for the royals on Earth. All of them. Doesn't matter what racial identity they've got. They all take that their DNA comes from the other half, the one of the two twins. And so the Romulus and Remus story, no matter where we go, we see in our cultural myth that there were these two twins that were the starting for the everything. It's in the Bible.
Adam and Eve, yep.
Yep. One of them ends up dead. Okay, one of them ends up dead in every one of these myths, and it is so we don't have the great Reman Empire. It's the great Roman Empire, right? So Romulus survived, Remus didn't, and so that kind of thing. It goes on and on and on. And it's replicated all over. Well, that's the deal. That there were these two twins. One of them went batshit crazy, flew off, destroyed Earth. The other one still survived. And these individuals are the progenitors for, now out of the DNA that the Nummo brought back, there was 7 beings, and there should have been 8. One of them had taken off, so one of the 7 was the twin to the nut job and is the head of the royals now,
Interesting
and the
number
other
7.
Yep, and then the 6 that remained are all of our ancestors, right? The people that didn't go crazy, didn't have that DNA. So the those who are crazy think they're above or whatever because of their selection. Maybe it's because they're sociopathic or whatever the reason is. They think that they are from that superior strain, and so that's just where we end up. The Nummo story is really interesting to read from the perspective of the French archaeologists or any of the people that have gotten into it, because you find the Nummo representation, aquatic beings all around the planet in statuary. There is not a place on the planet, maybe Antarctica, I don't know, but there's not a place on the planet that you can't find references carved into stone to these guys. We see them here in the rocks all the time, and they say, oh, it's an aquatic god. Well, that aquatic god sure looks like this thing in Greece or this thing in Turkey or wherever, right? And it's almost the same deal. And if you look at it, it's the same myth that you see, the Noah being saved by a fish. And the Hindu version of that is Mano is a fisherman, and he catches this aquatic being that tells him, hey, dude, let me out of here and I'll save your ass. And, same deal. And it's the same thing over and over again, that the aquatic being is intelligent, female, able to talk, looks fish-like, and so on. And then the Dogon people they can tell you the details. They can tell you why humans wear shoes. It's like, well, why do humans wear shoes? Where did the idea of shoes come from? Came from the Nummo, because the Nummo are aquatic. They have like prehensile feet and legs so mermaid fashion, right? And they can't walk well on land. So they had these little things they called a flying shoe. And so that's what it was. It was a lead, it was a device that allowed them to be transported easily. Only it caused flames in the dry African area, so they put a lead casing around it so as to prevent it from burning up the local bush. And so for a long time, the Dogon tried to wear lead shoes, in emulating their buddies, the Dogon, right? And the Dogon, and the Nummo, Nummo told the Dogon, no, dude, you don't have to do this. It's only because we're burning your bush up that we've got to. So it shows you where humans are relative to what's going on. But at least in this creation story that we see up here in the Salish and all of the others, there is no original sin. There's no. I mean, it's an equivalency. Okay, the Nummo felt bad about what had happened to Earth, and so they had to come back. And what they brought us was their immortality, their eternity. That's the real kicker in this that you don't see in any of the other creation myths. The Nummo are unique. They're immortal. When they feel they're about to die in this body, they basically create a new body in themselves and gestate and then put their consciousness into that body and give birth to their next life. And so they're immortal, but in a new body over time. And they couldn't do that for us, but they set it up another way. And so we end up in that same situation of sharing eternity with the Nummo, but we're not immortal within our bodies.
And I remember seeing numerous people. It was on some TV show at some point where these kids, these little kids are talking like there's somebody else from guy got shot down in the Japanese World War I or World War II, one or the other, and he knows his sister's name, and they're like, honey, what are you talking about? So they start doing the research, and sure enough, they find the guy's sister who's like 80 something years old now, and she's verifying everything. This 6-year-old kid, yeah, that was my brother. He got shot down over there. It's almost like his conscience and everything was put into this kid, this baby who was born elsewhere on the planet and now has his memories and his previous life, and he can tell them everything about the guy's previous life. Yet he was just a little child, nothing to do with the family, the original family. But that's kind of interesting. But I've seen a number of cases like that I've read about, and even seen some documentaries on TV about it. So
there's rules for how all that stuff works. It's really complex. It relates to the level of karma you're taking around with you, how much anxiety and trauma you suffered in your life, how long of a sleep you need between lives. Basically the more you do, the longer rest you need. So a lot of these things where people are born and the relatives are still alive, meant that they were, an early death person in that previous life or whatever, such that they didn't require the downtime. I mean, living is hard. It's harsh on consciousness, and it takes a long time to integrate it usually. And so this is why I get really irritated when people say, well, actually, it rarely works that way, that those memories persist beyond, say, into early puberty. It has to do with the hormones. And the hormones are extremely powerful in their effect on the brain, and your brain actually changes. But and you'll even see those people say that, at age 6, they could remember it quite clearly, but by age 8, it had all faded.
Yeah.
And it's, they're getting all wrapped up in this life, and so that previous life is gone. But most people don't have that. And so what we get is intuition, because during the metempsychoses, the period between lives, in our immortality phase, we boil everything down out of our previous lives into a thick syrupy mass, and we take that with us into the next life as our intuition that says, deep in your gut, for no solid reason in your brain, oh, don't do that. Well, it's because you did it in that previous life and you got your finger cut off,
Yeah.
That sort of thing, right? But no, I don't buy the idea that you remember you were, the handmaiden to some, ancient royal or some damn thing.
Yeah.
That those memories can't come through. The reason they can't come through is because they would drive you crazy. You would not be able to determine what is real and what is not real within the matrix of the experience we're presented right now, and that's our whole point here. So it can't be self-obscuring, because otherwise, if you had that happen to even 2 lives, then you'd be trying to live 3 lives simultaneously, not knowing what memory was for what. You wouldn't know what time you were in, and you'd basically lie around like a fish and flop a lot. It wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I guess that's, the Nemo and the royal lineage. That's why the Clintons wore royal purple, right, on their "I'm sorry I didn't win" speech.
Exactly. That's also, all those symbols are they're so weird, and you see it even in the woo-woo guys, right? There's a janky promoter out there, David Wilcock.
Oh, God.
Who's hooked up
He even
with,
looks like an alien.
Well, I actually think he's the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. I don't think he has any memories. I don't know that Edgar Cayce was a particularly good guy to be reincarnated from, but in any event, I actually think that is true. And we carry our faces from life to life to life. It takes a long time to burn out all of the scars and stuff on you. So all of the experiences I've had in my life that put scars on me this time, a lot of them are still working on things I probably did in previous lives that I should not, for whatever reason, and I haven't integrated them well. But this is why when in my next life at this approximate age, I'll look approximately as I do now, and the previous lives and so on. Won't have a clue as to what I was doing or why I ended up bald and all this kind of stuff. But Wilcock, getting back to that, he does this. He's always using purple, and he's always using that royal hue shade of purple, even in the if the intensity of the color is stepped down a bit. And it's like, what's going on there? The symbology is everywhere in terms of how they've got all this stuff structured. It can drive you crazy looking at it all. But getting into the woo-woo stuff with Antarctica is like very, very interesting, because that's here on this planet. Now we're starting to see visible effects affecting the atmosphere. Nobody's saying anything about these rays. And the little dribbly ones, those are just really weird because they're not straight. So there's some sort of a pulse or like a ball. The effect on the screenshots is like maybe little cotton balls in an arc. And so the thing arced from somewhere in the Weddell Sea area of Antarctica over to the tip of South Africa. It did it 3 or 4 times and then stopped. Quite odd. And there's all kinds of other stuff going on. Now, the good news is that the Pope of the Blue Space Chickens has said that he's been threatened by Intel, and so he can't talk about Antarctica anymore.
Is that Kerry Good?
Yeah. Yeah, he said he's been warned off talking about the research and development bases in Antarctica, where they're doing all of these chimera experiments, DNA kind of things.
Well, that's good. That's good that he's not messing with your data anymore.
Well, no. okay, see, no, the two don't relate quite that way because I still have to go out and get it rooted out. I can screen out movie stuff, and I do. It's real easy, right? The problem is that the Corey Goode phenomena sucked in a lot of people that are also in the entertainment industry. And so there was no big movie coming out about Antarctica or any of this kind of stuff until Corey Goode just now started talking about it. And usually the way you would screen out a movie is all of a sudden I get a big a blip in particular sets of language that go to advertising that are mainly hyperbole that you always see in advertising, the greatest movie, the funnest, all of this kind of stuff. And so they're very easy to get out of there. And then I can clean the context and remove that particular influence to that context. With this one, though, and then also, by the way, I can go and say, oh, yeah, look, there's this movie coming out about Dunkirk. And so, okay, that's why it's showing up in the data. And there's a lot of Dunkirk words and then this emotional hype around that. And so I can just eliminate that model space. That's what a lot of the stuff I do is eliminating things out of there that are just obstacles. Anyway, and so in this case, though, the obstacles were never validated by a movie. There was never any movie coming out about Antarctica. There was never any real-world demonstration that these values should not be rising. And they were not rising from the usual Hollywood lunacy context that you can see relatively easily in the data. They were actually coming from those people, but not in the course of their jobs, but in the course of their, other life, so to speak. They were Corey Goode, blue space chicken cultists. And so their language was starting to reflect that and pushed it out in a way I hadn't prepared for. So, my bad. I should have thought about something like this maybe occurring and putting up the gateways within the code that I've got now. But now I've got to go back and scrub all of the language out, return us to where we were, and then I can proceed forward. The good news, though, is that I can eliminate the Antarctic aspect of this, at least so far as the identified data. And now the new stuff coming on out, they haven't, the space chickens haven't told Corey Goode about any of the stuff that is in this next report, about the sentinel rays and the guidance systems and all this kind of stuff that we're actually getting physical evidence of now. So in that sense, it's good.
Does your data ever say that normal Joes, so to speak, can go down to Antarctica and check out the ancient artifacts at any point?
Doesn't work that way because, I might be able to find that, but the data sets draw attention by being emotionally hot. So at this point, although there's a huge amount of interest in Antarctica, and so Antarctica, the subject, is emotionally hot, we don't have travel with that, and we don't have, middle class kind of thing also being emotionally hot associated with that context. And that would be the only thing that would draw me to such a conclusion, would be to see a lot of sets about that sort of thing, being created. That's how I was able to determine that, well, there's going to be a big build out in New Zealand and Australia and in Patagonia relative to whatever the hell is going on in Antarctica. And it's because we are seeing sets that are emotionally hot for a burgeoning middle class, developing the lust to buy island property in Patagonia and having the money to do so. And then you trace it back and it's like, oh, wait a second. You see that there's giant corporations moving into Patagonia and they're not there to harvest seafood. And a lot of them are transportation focused, and it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, that means something is huge. That's massive something going on down there if you're going to have that happening.
Well, we're seeing it now with the number of food shipments going down there. They're running something there year round now. So before, in my lifetime, we would sit up here in the 70s, okay, and in the late. Let's say in the fall period for us, because of where we're located, the military would be sending out lots of flights to Antarctica out of McChord Air Force Base. There would be giant container planes flying out, and it would happen year after year after year. And so we were, in essence, a staging base for that, and they're not doing that anymore. And it's not that they're not staging for that stuff, but it's that it's no longer seasonal. It goes year round. And so they've got a big enough established presence that they've got a continuous logistics supply operation going to whatever the hell we're building or finding or doing in Antarctica. And so we can look at the periphery of it. You can actually see some of the money moving into Australia and New Zealand, just getting ready to build out for yet more transport.
And I think it's Lockheed. Wasn't Lockheed the one hiring people, civilian stuff to do things over in Antarctica? Once again, a big military contractor for the U.S. hiring civilians
known
to support.
for their space and UFO stuff. Yeah,
specifically. Yeah.
They're
the ones that have this contract.
It's SAIC, one of the spookiest companies ever.
Yep. Speaking of space travel, people would be mad at me if we didn't talk about silver.
Sure, yeah.
Now, in your data, is there any specific things we're looking for as far as silver news, silver action, silver pricing to say that silver is finally going to break free from the manipulation? Or is it kind of the same type of information you're getting in that has always come in?
No, we have new information about silver, but it's a backward-looking thing. So when I move model space to the point where model space is in February, March of next year, which is about the limit of where I feel comfortable with interpretation of the far edge of short-term data. Okay, when I move it there and look at the supporting sets backward, you can see that silver will break out between now and then, at least once in a fairly large way, and it may be recaptured after that within its traditional conduits. But sometime between now and, let's say, March of next year, there will have occurred an ICO that will have developed at least one, if not two or three or four, separate tracks for the dealing of silver, and that will be outside of that system. So we still maintain, so if you look at it linguistically, when model space is in February, there's still a thing for the CME doing suppression. Okay, it's not tight, it's not cohesive the way it was. It shows that it had been damaged. There's words in there about the damage it had sustained the previous year, meaning the time we're in now. But there's also all these other mechanisms that are selling silver independent of that, and it's an issue of dwindling participation, and it withers. It doesn't just fall over dead of a heart attack, right? It's just that we all move on, and really I think it's this one or more ICOs that we'll probably see, and I'm guessing, because I don't have any sure and certain knowledge of this, but I'm guessing we'll see the linguistics publicly available sometime around October or so. That's because we've got a little blip of crypto stuff that goes on in October, and then there's a huge echo for that in the end of February, all of March, all of April, all of May, and all of June of next year. So
it could be that the price suppression continues on the COMEX and the LBMA. It just gets smaller and smaller as other markets develop that are more blockchain focused, peer-to-peer type of exchanges, true exchanges of physical silver, and you'll have basically two sets of pricing.
That sure is what it looks like in the data, that, and as I say, it withers. It doesn't appear to fall, though the COMEX appears to just wither away, and it's still out there churning, data out like mad and trying to suppress the price, and they got contracts going, but who cares, know?
That,
so,
I mean,
it's weird.
It's been so long. It's been so long. I mean, I know you've talked about $600 silver, and to me that it's easy to see how silver could turn into $600 silver. It's not going to take $60 billion to come into the silver market. That's one trade in a free market, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And as soon as silver is traded freely and it's traded in a peer-to-peer exchange where you actually get delivered the silver and you're not trading at 10,000 contracts for each ounce, I see silver coming through this void of 150 years of price suppression and moving into something that is more honest and won't put all the silver miners out of business, is what's going on right now with the silver mining CEOs not standing up and doing a thing as usual.
The deal there too is that actually that kind of stuff shows up, see, because when the model space is in February, we can go over sort of horizontal in the data space, and we can look down the columns, and we can get data around solar panels and all the people that are the consumers of silver. at the manufacturing level. And so they're the ones that are benefiting directly from this ICO. Now, there's people that got involved that are peripheral, like us, innovators, that are also going to benefit. But the primary language is about the new relationship that forms between the guys digging the stuff out of the ground and their ultimate end user in a non-monetary sense, see? And so these guys form a more stable, more complete channel that grows over time as the other one dwindles. So they're like two opposing cones, so to speak, right?
So it will no longer flow through the banking operation. It'll go right from the miner, the manufacturer or from the mine to the manufacturer.
Correct.
To the retail buyer.
Correct. And there's also going to be, we have data about a new form of refining, okay, that won't be smelting, and it looks like it's going to be some kind of like continuous flow induction, electrically induced, small pinpoint furnace sort of thing, if you will, sort of instead of a 3D printer, it'll be like a home refining operation. It won't have to have huge vats and a lot of energy and stuff. It's energy that's going to drive it. And so that's showing up in early 2018 as being a big contributor to a lot of different metal stories. So I'm not sure what it is that's going to break us out. There's a lot of Renaissance stuff, of course, between now and early January. And there's like little hints of, new forms of prospecting for metals where you'll have some form of a tool that'll tell you if you're basically standing over it, that sort of a thing coming out. And so whatever those tools are, the fundamental works that they develop from should be visible between now and sometime in January. And I don't think it's at the patent level. So I think it would be, because no one ever talks about patents. People don't root around in those. But I think it'll be at least to a certain level mainstream within these industries. So I would suspect that the metals magazines and those people that cover it will know all about this by the time we get to February, even if the rest of us that aren't paying attention don't.
Okay. Is that linked to, you at some point talked about the way metals were mined? They're more liquefied instead of ripping down a mountain. You're going to liquefy it and extract the metal?
Yeah, that's pretty much the situation here. It's a weird kind of a thing. It's sort of a chicken and an egg situation, right? Because we need silver for what are going to be these field tools, these field mechanic or field energetic tools. So as I envision it, from the limited amount of data descriptors I've got, it's like maybe somebody has an app, so to speak, or something on a phone that they would mess with as their job that would control the fluctuations of an energy field that would be used in a number of different processes. And so that we're going to cross a barrier sometime. I think we may have already done it. Probably hasn't been announced yet, but we're going to have a breakthrough in energy field manipulation. So not like a big fusion reactor where we're using huge magnetics to manipulate, but something much more smaller and dynamic that'll be dependent on silver. And so it'll actually need the silver to get started. And then once you get the fields going, then you can figure out, oh, hey, look, we can use this to, basically liquefy silver out of these rocks at certain purity levels, right? Just like they've got that rice now that will extract silver from the soil at 15 times the level of silver in the soil. It'll concentrate it. And so if you really wanted to mine silver, you could plow a bunch of fields, grow a bunch of rice and then burn the rice husk and take the silver out that way. So there's all different kinds of new ways of mining that are showing up within, or new ways of silver acquisition that are showing up within the data, including somebody that's going to try and do it out of seawater. And they'll fail.
Is that brown rice? Is that brown rice or white rice? I want to make sure I stock up. I want to stock up on this stuff.
Well, hey, let me tell you, there's on that vein, there was a shipment. I don't know if it's still available, and there was some kind of a product code, but there was a shipment of sand from Alaska that Home Depot or Lowe's bought. I can't remember which one of the stores, and it's just flying off the shelves out here. People are panning it because there turned out there was a reasonable amount of gold in this stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just regular, sand for your cement, right? And so people are buying 60-pound sacks as fast as they can get them in Idaho there for a while. And then they ran out. But somebody had, bought it and sold it to Home Depot, not knowing that, it had been the tailings of some kind of a gold operation.
Oh, boy.
It was
Probably came from Oroville.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Come from there. Yeah.
I've yet to make it's not far from me. It's like 100 miles away. I've yet to make that drive up to Oroville, downstream Oroville, to do some gold mining and get my pans out. But I hear a lot of people are doing it.
Yeah, I've seen the
hard
stories.
work, though, Guy.
I know. I'd rather sit here with my electronic digital assets just to rile up the gold people.
Yeah, I just picked these up a few times, show them in the videos, sitting in my air conditioned room here. I'm with you on that.
Well, the fudgsicles, getting back to that, right? The problems that Joe was dealing with, I ran into this in some of the oddest places. So, for instance, one of the guys online who has captured video of the rays from Antarctica is this guy, Dabu077.
Yep.
Okay, and it turns out he's got a huge fudsicle going. Okay, he's worse than Lynette. And he's got I think it may be the rabid Christian perspective, mark of the beast kind of thing eating at him, but nonetheless, he's seriously anti-crypto. And so he's throwing FUD around like mad, but at the same time, there he is doing, he's saying, oh, we can't trust this money and so on and so on. But at the same time, here he is highly involved in tracking down energetic pulses from Antarctica, among other things. The mindset juxtaposition just was a little unsettling for me. But I find FUD everywhere in the data now. And a lot of it, I think, is a real problem here. In fact, I blame all of us, okay, because in the normal course of events, many of the people that are now involved in cryptos never would have done so. They would have been in cryptos maybe 2 years from now, okay? They're not like us. They're not innovators in the sense that you can just buy it and sit there. You don't care. You buy it, you get the next one. What a portfolio management, balancing, and all of that. And we just do that. I don't see any of us going crazy over the relative price of Pillar. You buy the tokens and you wait until they get their act together and get it out before you make a real decision about this stuff. But people are freaking out 2 days later because so-and-so said that Pillar was a scam and they were drinking away all the money. It's like, okay, guys.
Well, you really got to go into cryptos. You got to go through a couple of these major slams down to get your strength and your power to make it through this insanity of what we're going through. And I think part of it's planned manipulation. I think part of it's just a natural reaction to something that is, it really takes getting your mind around the concept. Me being a silver guy, I hated Bitcoin when it first came out. No, it's electronic. It's exactly the same as and then the more you think about it, the more you get involved, the more you understand what the code means and the blockchain, the truth machine of the blockchain. It makes more and more sense. And now I'm like a rabid crypto supporter. I still like silver due to the industrial component and the fact that it's been rigged for so long. But I can make 1,000 cases and 1,000 arguments why the cryptos are so much better than gold and silver when used as money.
Well, we can always use the blue chicken thing too. Okay. I mean, I sit there when I'm programming and I've got this stuff going, looking at data, and I'll think about some of these weird thoughts. And it's like, okay, Corey Goode, the Pope of the Blue Chickens, the one the blue avian space aliens are supposedly talking to, says that he went out in space, and I don't follow any of the details. I know broad brush that he went and worked for 20 years, and then he was time regress and age regress, and they did this to him 3 times. So he worked for 60 years for this secret space program, and it's kind of like, damn, where's his retirement? What'd they pay him in? And then, even more that you start thinking about it, okay, if they did that, you could become a multimillionaire because you got room and board on these spaceships. You could just take your paycheck and stash it, assuming they're paying you. And then also, all human civilizations, I don't care if it is Andersonville, the worst prison that was ever in existence in the United States in the Civil War, or if it was any of the horror ships on their way to Australia, but all human sub-civilizations always have a small method of barter and some sort of a dispensary. So what did Corey Goode use to buy toothpaste on those spaceships or in his secret space program? What are they using now? That was actually, I was kind of disappointed that we lost the venue for the conference. Probably should make that clear at this point to those people that are listening, that there was a narrow window, and I just lost it. I didn't know how fast you had to move in order to get this place booked, and I'm just not going to be able to put it together. Plus, two of the guys that I wanted to have in the conference aren't going to be able to attend. But one of the other people I'd contacted was Richard Dolan, who's into the secret space program stuff with Catherine and Austin Fitz at the realistic, mechanistic level, not the religious woo-woo part, right? And so I wanted to have Richard Dolan sit around and think, and then come back and tell us, what his thoughts were about what the secret space program uses as its internal currency. Because they've got to be doing something. I see those damn ships up there doing logistic runs. That's what those little critters are doing. They're feeding those big things up there, probably bringing up hot dogs, hot dog buns, towels, and soap, and all of this kind of stuff. Somebody up there's got to have some form of money. And so they're not trading gold and silver up there. And coins don't make any sense if you're weightless, right? So they got to have cryptos, is my way of thinking about it. But it's a goofy world, guys.
For those of you who don't know what Clif's talking about when he's looking at the spaceships, I own the night vision goggles as well, and I see it happen, and I have no idea what it is or why it is, but I do see it, and I see squadrons going out. I see one-off, cargo ships if they, Clif is right about that, but I see them with my own eyes, so it's not fanciful. I can only project kind of what they're doing up there and why they're doing it. Catherine Austin Fitz has talked a lot about where they get their funding as far as the black budgets in what's it called, HUD. That's what she was involved in HUD, saying where's all this money going? And but when you think about it,
let's think about that.
About it also, I mean, what's to stop the United States of America Treasury creating all this unbacked fiat electronic blips and saying, "Oh, here's our secret budget. Here's $10 trillion for the U.S. space program. Let's not tell anybody in the world and have them go spend it how they wish."
There's been a couple of reasons that they can't do that relative to the velocity of money supply if they're spending it here on Earth. Okay, that would be the issue. But I've thought about this because basically I guess I'm a pirate at heart. And I thought if I ever got my hands on one of those little floaty things, what would I do with it, right? Well, basically I'd do what my dad and all these other strange fellows in the military would do. I'd go out and look around and see what was there. And if I saw something shiny and interesting, I would pick it up. And I like, good food and sunshine, so I'd come back to Earth. I wouldn't stay out there, and so I'd bring some of this stuff back with me. And so my supposition is that the great giant sucking sound that the secret space program has been doing on planet Earth, not just the U.S., but all of planet Earth through us, is going to slow down, and it's going to stop real soon. Because I bet you that all about in the solar system are untold amounts of fantastic kinds of wealth. And all they have to do is figure out a way to bring it back to Earth and convert it to whatever money they need while they're here. And I think that they do need to do that for a couple of fundamental reasons. And that's basically Earth has the yin and yang energy that produces the food that we need. And so even if you were able to grow potatoes on Mars, I don't think that those potatoes are going to have the same level of yang energy that you need for your body to sustain. And you can't live on canned minerals and that kind of thing that long. So there's always going to be an energy exchange between the secret space program and Earth when they come on down here to tank up on corn and, McDonald's burgers and veggies and all of this kind of thing. And so at that stage, that's where the conversion happens. And at first I thought I'd sort of found it. And then it turned out what was going on was giant amounts of food shipments to Antarctica. Now maybe that's the off point. Maybe that's our point of departure. Maybe that's the place on the planet where we can take off and nobody can see us, and that kind of a deal, right? If so, well, it's curious that chemtrails are ending now, because of course it's brought all kinds of stuff out visible this summer that haven't been visible in I don't know how long relative to the night vision goggles. So it's going to be really curious as to what's happening. I've got friends in Patagonia that are going to get the night vision goggles. And they're going to, somebody way up in the Andes there that's got a really good view, can see both oceans. And so that's going to be interesting to see what they can get.
I find that I see less. The more clear view I have, the no moon out, I see a zillion stars, but I see less of the things I'm looking for. There's just too much up there. And I see less of like the moving craft and things like that when I'm, in the mountains with no light around. But when I'm in the back of my house in Oakland on a decent night, I'll look up and I'll see the spacecraft moving around because there's not as much stuff going on in the background.
Well, there's also the other issue. When you have you can only see, I think, 6,000 visible points of light without the night vision goggles, and you might see 60,000 with them. Things that used to be stars to you suddenly become constellations. You get to see them in much more detail. But there's also the timing issue. Most of this activity that's occurring is occurring at about 145 miles or so, I can tell, up above Earth's surface. So we would assume that that's low Earth orbit. And the time that the light shines there is relatively brief. So from sunset, you can't see anything really for the next half hour because there's too much glare coming from the sun as it sets below the horizon. So about a half an hour after sunset, for maybe the next hour and a half, is the prime point of visibility, and then about 2 hours ahead of sunrise. That's usually when I go on out because I'm a morning guy, and I'm going out and have a quick look. But about 2 hours out, and then about a half an hour ahead of it, there's too much of the glare and everything goes away. But boy, that's when it's crystal clear because the angle is such that you get to see everything that's spread out about 150 miles or so out. And at that range, it takes 3 pixels to make one of the little floaty triangle guys. And so it's quite distinct. And you can actually count the number of pixels in the big I don't know if they're cargo ships or command centers or whatever they are, but they're the ones that all the little triangle guys fly to.
Like the cigar-shaped ones?
Yeah.
I've seen
or
those
boxes,
as well.
maybe. Yeah, it's hard to say if they're a box or a cigar shape, but those are huge.
Yeah, it's fun when you hit that sweet spot and there's a lot going on. I took my son out there and he's a non-believer, and I'm like, all right, take a look at this and tell me what you think. He's like, no, those have to be our spacecraft. I go, do those look like any planes that you know, and do they fly that high? And is there anything that you know other than watching Star Wars that looks like that? He's like, no, I guess you're right.
They're not necessarily aliens, though, right?
Oh, true. Yeah.
Right. I think they're all secret space program guys. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're different from what we have and what we're taught.
Right. But what I've actually seen, what I really knew to be alien, because it was unlike anything that I would have imagined in the way of a spaceship, and it was just really spooky. And it was like, now why in the hell is it doing that? That's entirely backwards to the way that this thing should go. And it was a teardrop shape with a really fine point, and the fine point was leading, and it would create light, jump into the light, and appear way the hell out over there, and then do it all over again. This weird sort of squirrel hop across space. But when it showed up here, those little triangle guys, they just beat feet. They got the hell out of the way everywhere, scattered in every direction when this thing moved through. And it sort of hovered around them for a second or millisecond before opening up another big burst of light. And when it did that, I could clearly see in the goggles the two, let's call them tubular. I mean, the light was on the other side of them, so I was seeing them in silhouette. But 2 giant tubular things that had to be miles long that the little triangle guys had been going to. And so the little triangle guys apparently abandoned the 2 tube things in case this big teardrop thing was going to be nasty, but it wasn't. But it was across the entire arc of the sky in just whoosh. I mean, it made those the triangle floaty things look like a Model A.
We gotta get Joe some goggles.
Especially in Florida, especially. I mean, I kid you not. I know a guy down in near Fort Lauderdale. And he says he can see a lot of activity. He has issues there because of the density of the atmosphere. They get the much more water vapor. So his viewing time is altered relative to us. Plus their sunset, though, is so quick. I mean, you guys down south, right? Up here, the sun might not set until 9:30, 10 or whatever in the summer. And so I'd have to stay up way the hell late to even see anything. But down in Fort Lauderdale, it's like, damn, sun can set at 6 at night, and you got perfect viewing at 7:30.
Yeah, where I'm at now,
he's sitting out on the beach.
Where I'm living now, because there's like no street lights, there's no nothing for miles around here. I look up at night, like when I leave here doing my videos, I just kind of walk to the house. It's about 100 and something feet probably. I look up every time, and if there's no clouds, it's just pure, night sky, stars. I'm like, man, if I had some of them damn goggles,
We got to get him a set. We got to get him a set. And Joe would be the guy that we could put a camera on it.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. I do a camera here, and then maybe upload some YouTube videos on that.
Yeah,
you need to see.
Well, there's a couple of guys too, and there's one guy that got really weirded out. I can't think of his name now at the moment. Long name on YouTube, but he's seen the hovering craft in the clouds with his night vision goggles. Okay, he went out to look at night once. I'm talking maybe years ago, 2 years ago or more, and he was looking at in between the clouds at the clear spots and trying to see if he could find spaceships or whatever. I think he's Midwest, but I'm not sure. Anyway, he was just had the goggles on and was waiting for this cloud to blow over. And damn, he said there wasn't a huge, multifaceted spaceship blowing right along with it. Wow. And so since then, he's been running around trying to film the buggers. And I think there's something to that there's some kind of weird presence going on. It may relate to those, weird rays that are coming out of Antarctica as well. But it's a really interesting time. It's like, really cool. I can't wait to get on onto the coast. The area where we're moving, by the way, is right where in 2004 or 5, it was one of those 2 years, I think, there was a giant storm. And a bunch of all kinds of sea animals washed up on the shore. Whale and all of this kind of stuff, right? And along with that sea animal was a hominid, an aquatic hominid, our cousin. The Nummos didn't just create land mammals, they created underwater mammals that we think of as mermen and mermaids. And one of them ended up dead or near dead on the beach near where we're living. And convenient.
I saw footage of that.
Yeah, and conveniently, there's a Navy base nearby, and they came and scooped everything up and told everybody, we're going to kill your family if you talk, that kind of thing.
You don't know what you saw. That was an albino baby whale. That's
right. That just happened to be clothed and having weapons. yeah. But it's funny, it's quite true. They I know guys that have been hanging around boats all my life, and you get fishermen telling weird tales about bringing up fish out of the middle of the sea, Dorado, big fish, right? That came on up with a spear in its side, and it's like, now they didn't spear the bugger; they caught it in a net, and it had that spear in its side for some period of time. It didn't kill it; it wasn't a mortal wound, and it was going around with it, and the spear was unlike anything they'd ever seen. And, it wasn't like cast metal or anything. I don't even know that it was metallic. But in any event, there's lots of this stuff that shows up in the fish. Sometimes they just pitch it over, just like the giants off of Catalina, I know surfer guys that are saying they must have dumped them out there because of the amount of bone that's in the water off of there, ground all to bits and pieces now. And so when they were clearing Catalina out of the remnants of all the giants and putting them on the boats, the Masons didn't take them out very far. And so now they're coming back up on the shore. Scary.
Exciting times.
Yeah. That's why I think, too, about all the gold and stuff, too. It's going to be just fantastic when the structure here of the ICOs goes and breaks loose, because I think that the silver suppression and the gold suppression is also part of the basic knowledge suppression. And I don't care so much about the gold and silver at my age, but I want to know shit before I die. I want to get the straight scoop,
That would be, if all that information that's out there that we aren't allowed to know, and we're human beings just like everybody else. Just because you're in government or you're born into a royal family does not give you the right to know more than the rest of the world.
Sure it does. That's their viewpoint.
I can fight it though. That's their viewpoint. And yeah. I'm going to fight it with cryptos, and I'm going to fight it with silver if I can get my hands on more. But I'm really excited about the future and the breakdown of the old system and into the new. Whatever that new one is, it's got to be better than the control system we were in. Yeah. At least that's what we can fight for.
And we've got, cool stuff too, the flying cars, even if they are, basically big drones and stuff.
I'll take it. By the way, do you have a drone, Clif?
I've got one. It's dangerous here. I've got, 250-foot high trees. So, and
when you're out by the ocean at your new place,
that's different. Yeah.
It's going to be a blast. I'll give you some some of the things I've learned in my drone mind. I'm probably the worst pilot out there with these little things. But yeah, it's a blast, and it really gives you a different perspective.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to do that. I've got to watch out, though, because like I say, just down the way from us is this Navy base. So I don't want the bugger shot down.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Coming.
Yeah, well, I've got, and you supposedly have to register these things with FAA and things, right? And pay attention to that.
They give you the zone of how many miles you have to be away. And then if you fly it during this in a spot that they have covered, it knows it. The software knows it. It starts beeping. You're in a restricted area.
Cool. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, that's fun.
Keep going.
But I'm not really going to do underwater drones and stuff. That's what I'm interested in.
That's cool.
Kayla, I've started designing them, and Kayla and I are going to build a couple. There's a woman I know who designs and builds autonomous boats that she just sends on out as artwork, basically. And I'm going to take some of her concepts in terms of self-sailing vessels and that are semi-submersible and send it out, see what the hell it sees. Mainly looking into the water with various different frequencies, not necessarily looking above it, but I'll have cameras as well there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, imagine if you find a ship that has mummies on it and
gold.
Gold. Well, hey guys, look, I know where the gold is. There's areas around here, Goldendale, Silverdale, Gold Bar. We've got a lot of gold in these areas, so it actually is not that hard to find, Bix. The problem is, you got to get out on your knees and dig that stuff.
Yeah, I know.
That's not what I'm into anyway. But I wanted to see, there was something here. I think I've got it all. Oh yeah, 2 quadrillion in debt. 2 quadrillion now. The system is in debt. That was out a couple of different sources. So it's like that really gives us the idea of why the cryptos are doing so well and what we're in for. And also I've been able to track the language down, and I think we're at the 1.5% of the population being involved in some way with their attention on cryptos. So the 3% is the critical threshold. Once you're over 3%, you're into the early adopter phase. And we're just now starting to see some of that language. And in fact, some of the people that are freaking out by buying cryptos are early adopters that have been moved forward in their acquisition by people like ourselves, primarily Joe, who's done so damn well, with this stuff. And he tells people, and they say, well, I want to do what Joe did. And so, but some of these people are not constitutionally, they wouldn't have found it on their own, right? And so they're the ones that are throwing out and reacting to some of the FUD. And they're the potential victims of it. But so if we're at 1.5%, then we can plot this like cell phones. And, it took X number of years for us to get up to 500 million cell phones. And then the next 500 million was almost like
easy,
that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so we're in that X number of years, but we're about to cross into that 3%. And so the growth rate from 3% to 10% should be about 6 times as fast as we've seen in cryptos. So just to make the math work, if cryptos had existed only 6 years, all of the growth we've seen in the last 6 years will occur in the next 12 months, relative to that gaining that new.
That's going to be huge.
Body. Exactly, it's going to be massive, and that's based on humans, not the amount of money they're going to be transferring in. So there's a lot of people that have money that are starting to get really worried about the fact that it's in fiat. And they can buy gold and they can buy silver, but then there's cost associated with that, and that's the downside, the risks and so on. So they're moving into cryptos increasingly. I know that there is a lot of money going into gold and silver at the moment in a monetary fashion, but a lot more seems to be from the big guys moving towards some form of the crypto. And I thought at first it was like, well, they're going to try and create ICOs to get coins to get people and sucker their money away, but it's not really working that way. There's a lot of people out there that are part of the established monetary system that want to get out. And that's the interesting part. The language is really showing these guys panicking. It's like, where am I going to put, $50 million?
Right over here. Bitcoin, $4,100 as we speak right now.
You're kidding.
$4,100 right now.
I don't pay attention. See, I've been working all day, so I haven't paid any attention to that.
Yeah, unbelievable.
the amazing thing to me is that, some of these ICOs we're basically investing in companies in a lot of these things. And all it takes is one little piece of news, like AdX the other day had one little piece of news where they joined forces with VMO to implement their ad tracking services, and all of a sudden it's up 400% in a blink of an eye.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, they only had like 4 million users. Imagine if YouTube announced that AdX is going to be added on in billions.
Right.
And I think those are the things that's starting to come out now, the little bits of news, so that people understand, hey, these are not just cryptocurrencies that are being invented out of thin air. These are companies that are actually using tokens and have a business plan and things like that. And the more people that realize that and start to see it with the announcements, like Reggie's announcement at some point coming up about the Jamaican Stock Exchange, I think that's going to be a huge eye-opener for people on how to value these tokens, not necessarily tokens, but how to value the company behind it. I think that's going to be really cool over the next 6 months. And everybody who's saying, oh, no, it's a flash in the pan, can pretty much go away now. The cryptos are not a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
And
well, Joe did a pretty good job on that one group.
Yeah.
Calling the AC coin and stuff. But hey, there's something about that. The reason that the FUD sickles work so well, that so many people are licking on these things, is because there's a dichotomy. The early cryptos were community-based coins that had no business behind them. No, they weren't making anything, et cetera, et cetera. And so all of the new tokens and the ICOs are companies. But yet there's a lot of people that think they're like Bitcoin, a community effort, network growth, and all of that, and they just don't get it. You are indeed, it's like an IPO, only without all of the banks and everybody taking a slice of the action and driving all the costs up and then crashing the company afterwards. But you're investing in these things. That's why it's like the Pillar. People can get all upset about Pillar token they want. As long as those guys keep producing according to their defined work plan, and these are people that, hey, they've got a plan. There is a I don't want to say a nationalistic kind of an approach to it. I don't want to say that, but there's a determination to these guys. All right, and so they're working their plan, and it just so happens within our data sets that their plan is going to intersect with a blossoming environment just for when their product is instantly or is needed. And it's going to be instant, huge acceptance on this in February or so of next year. As we get this sudden burst of ICOs that'll be out on the market with new tokens and all of this kind of stuff, it's going to go crazy. And right there is going to be our guys with the Pillar wallet all ready to go with these things, right? And we're seeing it now with the companies that are starting to form, that I hear stuff in the background, and these guys are the ones that'll be doing the ICOs this time next year, in early 2018 is when it really starts. It's going to be, if you thought this was the crazy summer, it's like you and I, we're all sitting around here, right? And if we'd been real smart, we would be like the Nordstroms. That's a store up here in Seattle, Nordstrom's. Yep. It started up in Seattle. What they started as was selling picks and shovels and food and wheelbarrows and stuff to the guys going up to the Yukon to dig gold. And that's where Nordstrom's got their start. They weren't clothing or anything like that. They were a hardware store and food and stuff, general items. And so they made off in the gold strike there, the gold rush, by not digging any gold at all. And really, at this stage, Nordstrom's did like 1 or 2 years maybe with the early part of it, and then the gold rush really took off, and they started bringing them in boatloads. And the guys at Nordstrom's knew that was coming. They knew that the people on the East Coast would hear about this gold rush, and so they started buying and stocking. And when these guys showed up here on the boats, they had those shovels to sell to them and all of that sort of thing. And we're just about ready to reach that frenzy of a real gold rush, and it doesn't start until February of next year. So all of the activity that's going to hit us in October, November, and December with all of this stuff is nothing compared to what's going to roll out February, March, April, May, June of next year. We might see hundreds of companies doing this.
Did everybody hear that who thinks they've missed the boat in Bitcoin? Did everybody hear what Clif just said? How many times can we scream it from a rooftop?
More than we can count.
Just starting. Yeah. And we've got 2 trains at the moment, really. We've got Bitcoin, and then we've got Ethereum. there's a lot of other coins, some of which are payment mechanisms and so forth, that'll never have any attempt to run anything on their network. Ethereum is really moving towards that space. We've got EOS that'll eventually bring something up. But at the moment, it's the Ethereum blockchain that everything's running on. And there's no real business within Ethereum. They have their goals, but they were sort of setting out to be the Nordstroms, the supplier to the other outfits. And so we've got the infrastructure in place. Now all these other guys are doing some really cool kind of stuff, and you see the linguistics for ICOs spreading. It's starting to become known that an ICO is a company that is funding itself. And so we're now starting to see the linguistics that are a little bit different, because the mainstream people are starting to differentiate. Oh, it's not quite like Bitcoin. There's a guy in charge. There's actually a company here with an address.
Yeah.
Like, where's Bitcoin's headquarters? I actually got asked that. Where's the headquarters of that corporation?
That's a good question. We don't really know.
No. In fact, we'd have to say it would be temporal anyway.
Yeah, there's nodes everywhere. There's
Exactly.
there's branches everywhere.
Globally, yep.
Yeah.
And maybe even in Antarctica, for all we know. That would be something.
That's a super node down there.
There you go.
Hey
super
guys,
node.
There's the spooky part. You can do things. If one wished and knew how to do it, you could get tools and go hunting for IP addresses. There's all kinds of servers on the internet that have no IP address. They're dark, and a lot of them you don't want to mess with because of the people that own them. But if one wanted to go look, one cannot find IP addresses that are located that can be in any way discerned in Antarctica. It's like the whole area is dark.
Almost like its own internet, separate from everything else.
But we know it touches in two areas into South America. And we also know they're fiber. And big fiber bundles.
So somebody ran some serious fiber to this big rock of ice. There's nothing out there to see. Let's run some massive fiber over there. Here I am bragging about my little 10 gig skinny fiber line. Yeah, I got it from my house to my little man shack. They've got massive bundles undersea,
Right.
fiber.
Yeah. They paid a fortune for that, and where does it go and who's using it? But it's you can get right to where it terminates. You can see all this bandwidth being used up on this side, but it's dark on the other side. So they're intent on protecting it. But I'm not the cracker kind of guy that's going to try and snoop through that stuff anyway.
No.
But you can see a huge amount of bandwidth at that intersection of a undersea cable that only goes one place. And that's the southernmost continent, where supposedly we don't have internet or humans down there using internet or.
We got to track the penguins. What are you talking about, Cliff?
Yeah, that's what it is. That's right.
There's penguin porn, I guess. They got to have that.
Slippery when wet.
Yep.
There you go.
We're losing
that's what
Joe.
Newt Gingrich went down to look at. Nothing else down there.
John Kerry.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, no, look at right after Trump gets in, they send Gingrich down. within days,
Okay, yeah, Kerry went down. Obama's, I'm going to South America just for some little. We know where he went on his last days. Hey, let me go check out some cool stuff while I still have the access and security clearance to go do so, because I'm going to be kicked out here shortly. Trump's taking over. They go check some stuff out, and then
there's something else too. Look at it this way. I was thinking about this. Okay, so you're an outsider. And you take over whatever the way. All right. So you get elected or you take over, and you discover that there's this big secret thing that you didn't really know about, or maybe you learned about it sort of on the way in. Well, at that stage, you can't go and look with your own eyes, but that's really what needs to happen. If it's really there, if it's real at that level and you're in charge, you've got to go see it just to make sure you're aware of what's happening. So what do? In my case, if I were trapped here, I'd send one of you two guys because I can trust, or I'd send crypto blood, right?
No,
because
I'm going.
I can trust your observations, and so that's what we would do. So that's what happened. I think that they had to send a personal representative to get the straight scoop on what was going on, and I would trust, you guys to come back and say, well, this is what I saw, and this is what I interpreted from what I saw. And then I could sit here and I could make decisions about it. And I think somebody at that level in the Trump administration had to go through that as well, because there's some heavy duty shit going on down there. There's a lot of resources headed down that way. Maybe not quite as many as CERN, but I bet you there's more people involved now than at CERN. And so that would make it rival that huge expenditure that, all it did was smash some atoms, and yet most of the planet ended up paying some portion for the largest machine ever made. So there's some, as I say, there's spooky crap going down.
Yep.
Yeah, fun times. Ooh.
Yeah, I wish I knew somebody, or I had that little knowledge of someone that was down there, and I was, able to listen in on that conversation about, oh yeah, let's update so and so on this, and I get to hear what they're saying. Oh my God, I can just imagine some of the technology and things they're talking about.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, I'm too old really, but that's why I took up TIG welding. If I ever, stopped doing the bots, I could go on down and get a job welding. I'd have to change my look and stuff, maybe shave or put a wig on or something, just so they wouldn't know it was me. But, there are people that are doing that. I've got people that have said, well, hey, I'm going to go get a job, and if I see anything, I'll let you know.
But they can't get the information to you because it all has to go through that one cable.
Well, they were thinking when they came back, but that's really weird too. They used to do, summer gigs. Basically, you'd fly in spring down there, you'd work through the summer, and you'd fly out in fall before it got too nasty. And now they got people that are working year round, and people that'll do 9 and 11 months, and they've got this 11-month bonus program at one of the companies. That, if you stick and do the job there for 11 months, they'll give you 11 months pay on return. Additional, like a 2-for-1 kind of a deal.
Massive bonus. Wow.
Right. And so they really need some kind of stuff there in terms of whatever it is they're paying for. You see a lot of the jobs that are advertising now are even coming down into the more mundane. I have yet to see barista, but I've seen physical therapists. I've seen musculoskeletal medical massage therapist. So, sort of high-end stuff, but it's pushing it down, means they're broadening out the pyramid of support stuff. The more people you add, the more injuries you've got. You're going to need to, unkink after a day of, digging those stasis chambers out with the giants in them, all of that kind of stuff. That's hard on the back, even if you're using one of those little lifter deals.
Wow.
So anyway, somebody's going to come back pretty soon with a video and tell us all this, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to be part of the, the Blue Space Chicken group. Those people annoyed me. I got hassled by the individual people involved. They were quite upset to hear that I didn't think the space chickens were real.
I think everybody's upset about everything these days. Those space energies are kicking our butts.
Yeah.
A lot of meditation over here.
Yeah, I'm doing it chemically because I don't have the time for that anymore, really. I've got so much going on. So I have the Tulsi tea, and that really helps. But I've also noticed that these things are coincidentally temporal, and it's shifting through the day. So I think it relates to where the sun is relative to the galactic center in our or where we are relative to the sun and galactic center. So as the Earth spins, I find that the most intense period of time for the energies here in the Northwest are, and at our latitude, are in the late afternoon. And so I'll feel them from you get generally irritated from these things, or itchy or jittery, or they affect you, right? You're just not quite yourself, and then not comfortable in your skin, as the French say. And then around 4:30 or 5, it's like it sort of breaks, like breaking surf. It clears out the air, and you get a little bit of a relief. And then actually I feel a little bit, beefed up, and it's like, oh, negative ions, feeling good now. And it's been repeating this pattern, and the time of day is gradually shifting further and further into the later afternoon. So what I think is going on is relative to the sun. And the sun is an obscuring vessel. This brings up the fidget spinners. Okay, so the sun is out there, and as it's moving through space, the stuff it's moving through slips around it. And so our orbit back here, relative to the energy slipping around it, shows basically when you would hit the high impact levels of these energies. And you can actually plot it on SOHO, you can look at it in the X-ray graphs. So they're actually tracking this stuff, right? We're seeing more cosmic rays and all of this, and especially now with the chemtrails gone, whoever it is not signing those checks. But it's been quite brutal here. We've had no rain, except for yesterday we had a little bit, but it got maybe 1/8 of an inch of the soil wet, and that was about it. And it's all directly related to what's going on with chemtrails. Once they stopped those, it got blazingly hot, and Canada is burning. And by the way,
that was in the data too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It went all the way back though to. I think one of the guys up there said that he found it in the reference, the 100-mile fire. And I thought it would be, that was how it came out of the data, was 100-mile fire. I think, and it's in like maybe May of 2016 or something. I mean, he told me what one it was in, but I just forgot because I'm writing the current one. But it's out there, and it was labeled as 100-mile fire. And he said that I was wrong in the description set because it wasn't a fire that was 100 miles long. It was a fire at the 100-mile marker. There's all these markers, even though they're on the metric system. In Canada, when the train system went through, they did it all on miles. And so there's the 90-mile marker and the 100-mile marker and so on. And there were little towns that sprung up around them and this sort of thing. And so there was a fire, a huge giant fire, the one we're breathing, was at the 100-mile marker up in BC. And so now think about that. We're 5 hours away by car at 60 miles an hour from the Canadian border. And so, we're 300 plus miles, right? And so the fires are actually about another 100 miles north of that. And so we're looking at smoke that is so pervasive, it goes 700 miles down towards us and further south. And at the same time is going almost 1,400 miles to the east.
Wow.
So incredible amount of dead trees that are burning. And those trees are dead because of the aluminum from the chemtrails. So they kind of screwed us, guys. They were trying to keep the planet temperature even, so we wouldn't have these violent swings. But at the same time, they were killing off all of the flora with the aluminum poisoning. And they killed off huge amounts of trees that are now going to burn, put more carbon dioxide in the air, more ash, and that kind of thing. When the ash is not a bad deal anymore because it reflects the light, just like the volcanoes that'll be going off. Oh, and by the way, a bit of irony, maybe like galactic irony. The Pope of the Space Chickens is promoting his first conference of all places on Mount Shasta, on of all days, the eclipse. So get this, he's obviously in contact with the Blue Avians who've told him, yeah, it's cool, you can go on a volcano that's sitting on 9 active faults on the day of the eclipse, which is the most geologically active day for weeks. Well, for the rest of the year, it's going to set things off incredibly. So I think it's just kind of curious, and it's like
barbecue chicken.
It kind of reminds me of there's a young guy I heard an interview back. He worked in one of the Twin Towers on 9/11, and he uncovered some massive financial fraud. And was telling his bosses they didn't want to hear him. They tried to shut him up. They ended up firing him. And he was like, holy crap, I thought you'd be happy that I brought this to you. Now you fired me. Now I'm upset. They found out that this kid's going to start blabbing his mouth about it. No, we made a mistake. Come back. We'll hire you back. Come on back. We want to hear more about what you've uncovered. Can you come in? When do you want me to come back? How about 9/11? The day. Ooh. Okay. Get stuck in traffic. And never made it. And one of the planes hit exactly his office space that he was supposed to be that day while the management didn't show up. So having said that, I'll never forget that story. I heard him on a radio show. That's kind of that. Hey, yeah, come on over to the mountain on this day, the eclipse. Got a little surprise for you.
Yeah. Well, Oregon's going to be crazy with all the people up there, but the seismic activity from this stuff has been in the data for a long time, and it really doesn't relate to the eclipse per se. It relates to Jupiter and Saturn tugging on us like all hell because they're closer to each other and they're both on the same side of the sun with us, and it's just going to be this way for like 4 or 5 years. And coincidentally, we've got just this, the North American eclipse that's going to go off, and we've got what's his name over there in North Korea deciding he's got to go mano a mano with Trump with nukes and
Lil Kim.
Yeah, little Kim, yeah. What a hell of a situation, You would think the Chinese would just say, all right, enough of this, and send in the troops they've got massed on the border, because they don't need this. They don't need this aggravation.
Yeah.
And, I've heard people say, oh, well, the China's manipulating it and all of this. And they don't understand the Chinese mindset at all if they think that the Chinese leadership is behind Kim. He's a pain in their butt. They simply buy coal from him. And the reason that they do that is they don't want the refugees, right? They don't have the wherewithal to willingly initiate and take on the rehabilitation of North Korea. China fears, and they write about it all the time in their documents, they fear being forced by circumstances to take on the rehabilitation of North Korea. They don't need those millions of people that they've got to feed. They don't need to rebuild that social order and all of the problems attendant with it. But they're trying to avoid that in any way they can. Looks like maybe Universe is saying, you probably got to do this. It's going to be that, or have Trump go a little crazy and that kind of thing. But it'll remain. The 23rd is going to be the interesting day to see if they actually do shoot at Guam.
And that's this month.
Yeah, 2 days after the eclipse.
Yeah.
So Wednesday following the eclipse on Monday. And so,
I think on the economic side, the bad guys in the banks would love a war right now because they got everything's kind of teetering and coming to September timeframe. I don't see much smooth sailing after September.
The data sets would favor that interpretation. The governance just runs into real problems, and I think it's got to be economic. And the lack of chemtrails is probably one of the signs.
Yeah, can't afford it.
Can't pay for the stuff anymore. Yeah,
maybe that's why you'll start to see a lot of people running into cryptos. Hey, this country's having economic problems. This one happened. The dollar's going down, so we use it too. So we're up.
Oh,
my friend told me, my friend told me about this thing called Bitcoin. Look what he did with this. My buddy at work, he's like, man, I got a good friend. He's like, I know you were telling me the other day about this thing you got into and sold off, and I heard what you said, but my friend just, he just got into this. He doesn't even know what he's doing. He got into this thing called Neo or something. I'm like, oh yeah, the old Ant Shares thing.
Yeah, Ant Shares.
I said, yeah, they did quite well. He's like, man, he's up like, he put $1,200 on a credit card, maxed it out, and it's worth like $5,000 now. I'm like, well, I've heard of that kind of thing happening before. And so he's like, I can't sit by anymore.
Pay the credit card off, and then he can play with that.
That's what I told him. I said, tell him to get rid of it. He's like, well, it's a 0%. I was like, well, either way, he's got the cash. Just get it out of the way,
Yeah,
that's the whole point.
Get it out of the debt system. Yeah, but hey, it's it's going to be just incredible. And at this stage, it's I'm actually kind of, well, I got myself into a bind. I've got a Help Centra card now for the investors. And, Sam needs somebody to help him along because obviously Sam needs somebody to help him along, as he demonstrated. But it's getting too fierce out there. There's too many cryptos. You got to have too many wallets. Where in the hell is my Pillar wallet to hold them all?
Yeah, that's what I want to see. And I feel like the day that is announced, it will be one of those great news days where, oh my God, look how much it just jumped today. And I'm going to come out and have to yell at everybody. I told you guys to calm down. Who cares if it drops right now? It's going to go back up. I told you to wait, But it's not in a mean way, of course, just to let people know this is just the way these cryptos work. This is not like the stock market. This is a whole different animal. You just got to be patient sometimes.
Development cycle. And these guys are working with all these cool tools, so they don't have to build from the bare metal up. So instead of taking years, they can compress their development cycle into months, but you still have to do development and testing as you go along. And then you've got to do all, especially on things with wallets, you've got to have bounties for people to come on in and crack. Because as much as your internal guys who know the code can try and crack it, it's never going to be as safe as when you've invited real crackers from the outside with a $50,000 or $60,000 bonus. And I know these guys that are in the dim coin. Okay, I've chatted with these guys. They're really sharp fellows. They've got $60,000 cracking bonuses in their product built into this. So and they would love to have somebody claim those prizes by cracking their way down through to that particular level, because it would expose any and all vulnerabilities, at least getting into that far. And so there's the whole cycle that they've got to go through. But even so, because of the internet, you could do massive amount of cracking in a cycle as little as 15 days. If I had $100,000, if I had a product, I would, put $100,000 worth of Bitcoin or something inside my wallet that was the product I wanted to test, and just put it out there and let its address be known, and say, you all have at it. The first person that can crack down here and leave a trail, and I would have it set up to leave a trail, and that would show me, okay, this is how they did it, and they could tell me what this exploit was. That's really the route to go, is to pay for it.
Pay them.
Yeah.
Pay them good money. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, guys, we are at about. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say we're about at 2 hours and 6 minutes. If you got more to cover, I got plenty of time too. It's up to you.
I just, like I was saying about all the FUD, and how it's now servicing through churches, through religions. It's not only just the Christians. You're also seeing this stuff coming out of India with the fundamentalist Hindus there. Oh, no, can't have non-gold money. That's a true gold money society. And this is something, Bix, next time anybody bitches about, oh, well, gold's going to save us and stuff, it's like, well, it hasn't saved India. They've got, everybody's got gold as a store of wealth, but then it's not really able to be exchanged. You can't do stuff with it, So
it's
anyway,
the largest importer of gold in the world, and one of the poorest countries.
Yeah. You guys ever see these, by the way? Have you ever run across these things?
No, I was going to pull up my Magic 8 Ball when you had that up, but it was inferior to those, so I just left it on the table.
Yeah, this is a chromed steel sphere that has little things inside it, right?
Okay.
And it's sort of like the opposite of the nervous fidget spinners, because the idea is that you put them in your hand and you learn to control them such that there is no sound. And so it calms the mind, not simply reinforcing the fidgety patterns inside your brain. The fidget spinners, I don't think, are a good idea, simply because they're going to harmonize with your natural nervousness and ingrain those patterns into your brain. Whereas these kind of an approach, the old Zen Taoist approach, the martial arts approach, is that you would control your mind by learning to control your body at a micro-fine level so that you don't get any sound out of it, right?
What is that thing
plus,
called?
Anybody gives you any hell about anything, this is about, I think these are 6.5 ounce balls.
They're wonderful for protection as well.
Can you buy those online?
Like that.
What are they called?
Yeah, I got those online. They're called iron ball. So this is how you get your iron balls.
Oh, is this it right here?
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
There's stuff inside of it though. There's like something inside. Or these
there's a little noisemaker, a little bell inside.
Maybe it's this one.
And so you get them in a set
Floating
there,
balls.
and you spin them, and and they're really good for massaging the hand, right? And for typing with my arthritis, they're the only thing that really will massage out the soreness on the inside of the knuckles here. And it's just can be quite terrible. I mean, they can really pop. But I saw these kids at the in some store. I was getting something, and they were in the other checkout line, and they're just spinning away furiously on these little plastic.
My kids have those little spinner things.
Right, and that's why I was saying that. No, I think that if you're nervous and fidgety, I know why you are. It's because of the vaccines and what they did to your gut when you got those vaccines. But if you get your gut biome correct, you might still have a residual nervousness that extends from the impact on the liver and things. But those fidget spinners are simply going to reinforce that in your brain. They're not going to really calm it down and make it go away. You can actually learn to control it with these.
I'm going to get myself some Clif balls.
I just did. I was going to actually tell you to hold those and look to the left and cough.
Well,
cha-ching! Do they chime when you do that? Ding!
Yes, they do. You're funny.
God. I had to crack it. I just bought a couple.
I say we got to go, guys. It's getting hot up here, and I got to feed the dog and myself too. So.
Yeah, awesome conversation. We have to do this every month. Everyone's dying for it every time, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Into September, and I'll be much more trucking over to the coast, and maybe I can set it up and do it over there while we're doing rehab. I don't know.
Yeah, a little window shot or something.
Yeah, it's a cool area over there. We're up 109 feet, so we're safe from the tsunamis. I can do surf fishing with Canon or or kites.
I looked that up online when you told me.
I want to see that. Yeah, I want to see that.
Well, it's a compressed air cannon, and you freeze up bait on a hook. You bait your hooks, and you put them into this mold, and you put in chum and freeze it up with fresh water, and it's the shell that goes into this compressed air cannon, and it'll shoot, and then you got a huge reel, and it shoots this stuff out like 200 yards. And then you reel it back up with a winch, because you put 4 or 5 hooks on there, and out on the coast out here, you might get tuna. It's been a while that I'm aware of, but the last time they did, it was 800 pounds, $500,000 tuna.
You can hook it up to your truck winch.
That's how they haul them up.
There you go.
You just sit there, and
hey, listen, as long as you don't have one of these mermen or merwoman hooked to it, you're good. You're okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
That'd be worth a little more, probably.
Yeah. Hey, I don't think I want to piss those guys off. I'm too close to the beach. They might be able to climb.
Attack!
Yeah. The attack of the mermen, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, till next time, ladies and gentlemen, the 3 amigos are out, and we'll get together again in September.
There you go.
I'll see you guys later. See ya.